Quick disclaimer, this is not a how-to. Betty Chronicles is just purely documentation of the struggles of a beginner baker. Previously on Betty Chronicles. So I don't have any baking powder, and the recipe calls for 2 teaspoons of baking powder. And we're going to get started mixing. Okay, so this is how the ending of my cupcakes look. Hey guys, welcome back to my channel. My name is Yavian Johnson and I'm bringing you another video. Okay, so in this video, I'm going to be doing a second episode of Betty Chronicles. So if you have not watched that video, you can go back onto my channel and it will be another video that's about baking, but it's going to be lemon cupcakes. Let's just say the first video didn't go exactly how I wanted it to go, especially when I didn't have a lot of ingredients. But today I am pretty positive that I have everything that I need to make brownies. I kind of like a crackly top, and I like it to be thick and chewy and also fudgy. So hopefully these brownie recipes that I'm trying gives me all that I need in a brownie. I'm going to be trying 2 recipes. One is coming from one YouTuber called Preppy Kitchen, and then it's also going to be another recipe that's actually coming from the Toll House box. So if I like both of the recipes, I'll probably put both of those in rotation, but if I don't like any of the recipes, I'm going to be back looking for what recipes I want to use for my brownie video. So without further ado, let's just get straight into the video. The first recipe is coming from the YouTuber that I mentioned earlier called Preppy Kitchen. He starts off with a bowl. Then I melted 1 cup of unsalted butter. He also added like coffee, and I've been wanting to add coffee for a very long time to something because I keep hearing that the coffee brings out the chocolate flavor. So I'm going to add the coffee. You are not required to add the coffee if you don't want to, but I'm going to add a tablespoon of coffee into this. I'm also going to add a tablespoon of vanilla. Then I'm going to add 1 cup of granulated sugar. I'm adding a half a cup first. Okay, and then this is the second half that I'm adding. This recipe also calls for brown sugar. He said light brown sugar, but I have dark brown sugar because I like dark brown sugar, so I'm going to add dark brown sugar into my recipe. So that's what I have in the beginning, and then I'll just start to mix what I already have in here. Okay, so as you guys can see from this mixture, it is pretty dark. Now if you was to use light brown sugar, it will be a lighter color, but this is okay for me. It's all going to be darker once I add the cocoa powder in it anyways. So now I am going to start adding the dry ingredients. Okay, my bad guys. I'm not gonna add the dry ingredients right now. Right now I'm gonna add the 3 eggs that I forgot to tell y'all about. These are large eggs. Usually when they call for eggs in a video or in a recipe, they're talking about large eggs. So this is what this is. Preppy Kitchen said that it doesn't matter if you add 1 at a time or all 3 at a time, and I'm just like, okay, cool. So I'm gonna add all 3 at a time so that I'm not whisking 1 at a time and like making the video longer. But that's what I'm doing right now. And then the next time I come back on, it's actually going to be me adding the dry ingredients. All right guys, I'm showing you a close-up of my wet ingredients. I'm going to take this out, this whisk out, and then I'm going to start adding my dry ingredients. Okay, so here I have a sifter. The reason why I have it is because Preppy Kitchen said that since cocoa powder is lumpy, it's best to sift things in there into the wet ingredients so that it won't be too clumpy. Okay, so the first dry ingredient that I'm gonna add is 1 cup of all-purpose flour. Next, I'm going to add 3/4 cup of cocoa powder. Now, I learned about cocoa powder that one of the reasons why my recipes probably weren't turning out like they should have was because I wasn't using actual baking cocoa powder. Like I was using Nesquik, and Nesquik is supposed to be that chocolate flavored stuff. And my mom was like, maybe it does have cocoa powder in it, but it's not like fully cocoa powder. So I'm not sure if that played a part in why some of my brownies were followed to the T, but then they didn't come out like the recipe talked about. So I'm hoping that everything works out. I'm putting everything in here that it says to put in here. So I'm not making any modifications or anything like that. I'm not substituting anything because I don't have what I need. I have everything. So this should turn out like it's supposed to. Okay, so the last dry ingredient that I'm gonna add is 1 teaspoon of salt. You can add less if you want, but right now I'm adding everything that the recipe calls for. No modifications. Then we're going to fold everything in. Okay, so this is it mostly mixed in together, and it gives me that brownie consistency, and it smells like chocolate brownies. Usually when I make chocolate brownies and I use the Nesquik that, you know, isn't cocoa powder, it usually doesn't smell like it should smell, and I'm like, okay, I hope for the best once I bake it. But now that I know that I'm supposed to use actual cocoa powder for baking, that actually says cocoa powder for baking, then that's what I'm gonna do. Okay, so the last ingredient that this recipe calls for is 1 cup or 1.5 cup of chocolate. He used dark chocolate, but I'm going to use semi-sweet chocolate, and I'm actually using a baking bar. You can use chocolate chips if you want to. I had a baking bar that I've been meaning to use for a brownie recipe, and now that I have the chance to use it, I'm going to use it. This isn't a full cup, but I used the entire bar of chocolate. So I'm going to add this and then stir it up in there. Okay, so I'm done folding in my chocolate. So now I'm going to actually put it in the pan. This is either an 8x8 pan, or it could be a 9x9 pan. I'm not entirely sure, but his recipe calls for it to put it in an 8x8 pan. He said you can put it in any other pan you want to put it in, but you have to be okay with it being thinner. So I'm going to put this in. This is parchment paper. He cut his parchment paper so cool, and I thought I was going to be able to do that, but I'm not. So I'm just going to put the parchment paper on top and then allow the weight from the brownie mix to push it down for me. Okay, so as you can see, I'm pushing the brownie mix into the corners. All right, guys, so I cut the parchment paper because I felt like it was obstructing the view with what you guys can see. This is basically what it looks like before I put it into the oven. I'm going to put it in the oven on 350 and bake it for 30 minutes. And once I put this in the oven, that completes the first recipe of the brownies. This is supposed to be fudgy. It didn't say anything about it being chewy, but I like chewy brownies. So it had a crackly top when I looked at it. Hopefully mine's come out like that. And it is thick. So yeah, I'm going to pop it in the oven, and we're going to get started on the second recipe. All right, so now this is the second recipe, and this is actually coming from Nestle Toll House. This recipe was on the cocoa powder jar, so that's the reason why I decided, okay, let me just do 2 of the recipes and figure out which one I like. What do I not like about it? Right off the bat, when I was putting some of the dry ingredients into this bowl, it called for 1 1/3 cup of all-purpose flour. Now that's already different from the first recipe because that called for 1 cup of all-purpose flour. Then it also calls for 3/4 cup of baking cocoa powder. Now that's the exact same ratio that it asked in the first recipe, so that is the same. This one calls for baking powder, and if you guys watched the first video where I was doing a little bit of struggling and had to make some accommodations, you would have known that I did not have baking powder. And guess what this is? That says baking powder. I'm really happy that I finally got the baking powder, so now I'm able to try out this recipe. Like I said, the recipe calls for baking powder, so it calls for 1/2 teaspoon. The recipe, it doesn't give me how long I'm supposed to cook it. It doesn't tell me if I'm supposed to add the wet ingredients first. So I'm just gonna add the dry ingredients first, and then we'll see if it mattered afterwards. Wow, guys. I'm just going to save y'all the trouble and let you know that you do not, I repeat, do not add the wet ingredients into the dry. It needs to be vice versa. I'm going to skip the mixing process for this take, show you how the brownies came out the wrong way, and then come back on to show you the correct way of mixing it. Now this is supposed to spread all the way. All right, so you guys see how thick this brownie is. It's supposed to be chewy, so this is like understandable, but it's supposed to fit on a 13 by 9. Now this one didn't say use an 8 by 8 or a 9 by 9. It said 13 by 9. Hopefully it spreads across like it's supposed to. All right, so these are the brownies side by side. Okay, so this one is the Toll House. I mean, it's not too bad, but it's a no. I'm not making this one again. My mom is trying the first brownie, the Toll House brownie, and she's gonna give me her honest reaction.
All right, first of all, disregard my hair because we're doing a lay down process, but anywho. From the first look of it, it looks like it didn't spread, but that doesn't mean anything. That kind of tastes kind of dry, like too fudgy or too chocolatey. I don't know how to explain it.
All right, I'm not gonna rip on the Toll House too much. The problem was me, like how it usually is when it comes to making stuff. I can't rip on it too much, but I can't, like, these are uneatable, so they're gonna have to go in the trash. So in order for you not to get to this point mentally, let me go ahead and show you guys how to make the second recipe the correct way. So I'm back, and I'm coming back to, you know, make up for my trial and error with this Toll House brownie mix that I had the first time. We're gonna see if I'm gonna do this right. So already I have the dry ingredients in here. I will put the ingredients down below, but of course, if you guys rewind, you will see the measurements on the screen already. The only dry ingredient that I did not put into this bowl and mix up was the sugar. Put it in this bowl, and I put the rest of the sugar there. Now I'm going to mix up the 3/4 cup of butter, and then I'm also going to do the 2 tablespoons of water. Now we're going to do a little whisk. Now we're going to add the 2 eggs. If you have large eggs, then this is what the recipe calls for, but I have extra large eggs. And we're going to add the 2 teaspoons of vanilla. Now I'm going to stir in the dry ingredients. I'm going to do a little bit at a time. And then I'm also going to preheat my oven to 350 right now. Okay guys, as you can see, it's already starting to thicken up. Now this is thickening it up a lot better and in a different way than the last time I did the recipe and did it wrong, where I added the wet ingredients into the dry ingredients, and I just mixed everything in a one bowl. But you really do need to add it into separate bowls and then add the dry ingredients into the wet ingredients. All right, so this is how the brownie mix looks, all whipped together. And now I'm going to start placing it in my pan. So that's spread out much easier. I'm about to pop it in the oven on 350 and bake it about 18 to 25 minutes. All right guys, so this is what it looks like after 18 minutes. So this is not going to be a crackly top like that other recipe I showed you, but it's spread out and looks a lot better than what it did before. Hopefully once it cools down, it actually turns out how I hope it's going to be. Okay, so this is a side-by-side comparison of following the actual recipe on the Toll House cocoa powder box, and then this is the recipe that I got from a YouTuber. Some things about this is that it's thicker, of course, because I put it in a 8x8. Now if you don't like thick brownies, then you would have preferred to make it spread out a little bit more by putting it in maybe a 13 by 9, 11 by 7, something like that, to make it thinner. This one I put in a 11 by 7, and it made it thinner. If you would have put in a 13 by 9, I'm pretty sure it would have been even thinner, but it came out pretty good. It came out a little bit better. Now it's still a little bit warm. I would have liked it to be more chewier, but this is more of a fudgy thick brownie. And if you want it to be less fudgy, because once you cut into it when it's warm, it's going to be really thick and ooey gooey. This one does not have any extra chocolate. It just has the cocoa powder. Now it tastes like chocolate for sure. Now it is moister than it was before when I first made it. But some things that I would like about it is if it was just a bit more chocolatey, but I feel like it tastes about the same that it should have tasted. It just depends on what your favorite thing is. Thank you for watching and seeing that I am a beginner baker, and then sometimes you mess up, and it's okay. Once you mess up, you just come back the next time and figure out what is wrong. My mom has actually go through what it said to tell me like what it is that I possibly could have gotten wrong. And she was like, "Oh, did you add it into another bowl?" And I'm like, "No, I didn't. I didn't add it into another bowl." Don't forget to like, comment, and most definitely subscribe, and I'll see you in the next one.